Hello and welcome to Be the Wolf. I'm here today with Alina Vehuni, and she is into wholeness education and reimagining parenting and education for the youth and all of us moving forward. But one of the things that's really important that we're going to dive in today is to how important and how valuable it is to have a reimagining of the parental and the education roles, because of the fact is the way we move through the world has so much to do with the way that we interpreted the world growing up, and the people that contribute to that are our parents and our educators. And so if you have ever been feeling like you were smothered by your parents, if you felt like you had to push back against your parents or your teachers, and if you didn't feel as free and you felt like you were not enough and couldn't live up to what they wanted for you, this episode is going to be really important to listen to. You're definitely going to relate to some of Alina's story and the mission that she is here to create in this world. Alina, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation, Janae. It's an honor to be here.
So, starting off, tell us just a really short thing about the wholeness education platform before we dive deep into the beautiful story and the empowering story that brought you to this place that you are now.
Thank you. Wholeness education is really a mission that was catalyzed as a result of my own healing journey. And it was 8 years of long and painful excavation of my own past, which included both upbringing, parenting, and education that I received. And when I finally reached the point where I felt whole and I could really live my truth in every which way, I was gifted. That's how it feels. I was gifted this idea and this concept and almost this promise to others to create what now I know I should have received in order to be the happy, authentic, fulfilled, and actualized person that I came here to be. So that's in a nutshell is the idea behind wholeness education. It is three interconnected pathways where we work with youth, parents, and educators, and it's all about cultivating the concept of wholeness. What parts are not visible, how to see the child in front of you, how to relate with them, how to understand how you affect a person or shape the person, oftentimes unintentionally, because of your unexamined unconscious inheritance with the best intentions. And it all comes from love, oftentimes very fear based love, but ultimately the child that we're really trying to serve, it does not feel free to explore who they are and to really act from their own truth. And so that's really the mission, to bring this to work with school districts, different schools in the US and globally, in order to create the environment that allow our children to be exactly who they are and create a different trajectory of life for themselves and for the collective.
Yeah. And so the people now, okay, for me, I fully grew up believing that there was something wrong with me. It was like everything I did, it wasn't right. And the rules were always changing. And it was so confusing as a kid. And I could feel the frequency of people. So I could feel when what came out of their mouth and what was going on in their body didn't match. So it made it even more confusing. And so, because I started believing that there was something wrong with me, I was like, oh, the curious part of me that asks questions, let me shove that part down. Oh, the part of me that likes to achieve because my mom gets mad that I got into the gifted program and doesn't allow me in, or that I skipped a grade, let's shove that part down. And so I just kept shoving more and more of myself down and denying who I was. And it took the excavating and reclaiming all of that before I could start to feel whole, before I could feel good enough. And It for many years, I was like, it's all my mom's fault. But she, just as you said, was operating also from this wounded place where she didn't feel whole and she was projecting that onto me. And so, if you're anybody out there, if you feel like you're not enough, like there's something missing, it's really important to dive in and listen to this story because you're not alone in feeling
Mm.
that way. And when you can see the path that other people have taken to reclaim their wholeness, it lets you know and it lets your subconscious know that it's possible, which without even consciously taking a step, you will start taking steps towards your own wholeness. So, this is an important episode. Thank you, Alina. So, you had an event that kind of catalyzed a lot of this stuff. And you refer to it as an encounter. Let's talk about that. Let's share what this event is, this encounter that began the journey of you moving towards being the wolf, becoming
Mhm.
who you truly are.
Yes, that was an encounter that literally split my life into before and after. And that really catalyzed the healing journey that I was on for 8 years before wholeness education even came about. And at the time, I was a school principal. It's a really big job. You are working with hundreds of people. I was responsible for over 700 students, all the teachers and all the services that they were receiving, multiple programs, all the parents. So it's an entire community that, as a principal, you're responsible for, including all the parking spots that people cannot find when they come to attend a meeting. Literally everything comes your way, and I was at the point that my body just was about to shut down. I've overridden the signals of it for so many years that I really needed to listen, recalibrate, and maybe do something different because as an empath, I was absorbing a lot of that collective energy, and oftentimes it was affecting me at the very, very deep levels energetically. And I had really no concept of any of it, mind you.
Yeah.
Right. So it was all about professional excellence that I was there to give.
Yeah, really quick, because I think this is really important. You're coming to this point where you're coming to a breaking point. Some people might call
Mhm.
it burnout. And at the time, you couldn't see the signs, but looking back, I'm sure you can see the signs. What were the signs?
The signs was the fact that I just did not want to show up as much as I loved working with children. All the other responsibilities that I carried were not even realistic for one human to take care of. And I just wanted to be there just to support the instructional leadership for children, but not necessarily deal with all the people's conflict, particularly adults who were there to be professionals, but instead there was a lot of just people's conflicts that I constantly got engaged in, and that took a lot of my time away from my direct responsibilities. And so it slowly started, my body started reacting to those things. Mind you, I've accumulated a full baggage before I even became a principal because of the childhood that I had, because of the trauma, and because of the accelerated professional path, because I'm an immigrant and it felt like I had so much to do to catch up. So I was on this fast track of achieving my goals and really conditioned by no pain, no gain philosophy. So I was just going on this linear path, really determined to achieve all the success. And I think I now understand that was also a way of proving that I was enough, all the degrees that I got. I was always the sense exactly what you described, feeling not enough. So this was not necessarily who I was, although I love children and I love education, but really this career ladder that I was climbing with such dedication, it was just that perfectionism, which is definitely a deep trauma response.
Yeah. So what
So,
really quick though, you said your body it started to take a
mhm,
toll on your body. What were the symptoms? Like if looking back, the little symptoms that we overlook. Obviously, when it's like you're so exhausted you can't get out of bed on your days off. Things like that are obvious. But looking back, what are the little symptoms? Just so if somebody's there, they might be able to be like, that's happening to me.
So it was definitely elevated inflammation markers because of the stress, indigestion, right? Because it's all related. So those were the main ones initially. But then because I wrote them, they got deeper and deeper. So more like psychosomatic, right? There's nothing wrong with me in terms of like in medical terms. And that's why the medical system could not identify anything when I got to the point of fainting. So I would have those fainting episodes several times a week. And before that, it was the same indigestion, feeling incredibly heavy. I had extreme brain fog, so it was really hard for me to think straight. I had heart palpitations at night. I could not really sleep well. And basically, the feeling was like my health was deteriorating so fast, and that my internal organs were starting to shut down one at a time. I had really difficult time breathing sometimes that I would need to step out from a staff meeting just to catch my breath, right? So all those symptoms accumulated and I was on the verge of a burnout. I would actually call it a full-on burnout because
Yeah,
I
you're
would end
definitely
up
there.
in ER 3 times a week because of the fainting episodes.
Yeah, that was definitely like past the regular burnout. Sure. So you started having these episodes. You're in the ER, in and out of the ER, you're fainting, and then you had an encounter with what you call a twin flame. Tell me about that.
So the ER and my own doctor, they would scan all my body organs, say you're completely healthy, go back home. But the episodes would repeat. I also had hives all over my body, so my body was breaking out in this big red patches, and that was also highly elevated inflammation. So I walk into this small homeopathic clinic, and I had known the doctor for 20 years, his family friend, and in total devastation because I can't find a solution. And he looked at me, and just by describing my symptoms and seeing my condition, he said, I think this is your spine. I have a chiropractor on staff. I'm going to have him take a look at you. For 20 years, I've been to that office. My family members had been there. He never had a chiropractor on staff. That day, he did. This man, like literally in the doorway, he went down my spine with his thumb and said, I got the picture. Starting tomorrow, 30 days of daily treating, and I promise you, you're gonna be fine. He looked at me with his big blue eyes as if I was like, am I dying? That was like an internal question. And he said, I promise you're gonna be fine. And he left. And so it was that month that fully transformed my life. I was a completely different person after that encounter. A month later, he disappeared as mysteriously as he appeared. The clinic continued not having a chiropractor on staff, just like they did 20 years prior to that. And when I inquired with the receptionist, turned out that he showed up at that clinic 2 weeks before I showed up. So he was there long enough just to provide the treatment, and he was gone. And what was happening is like he was doing manual therapy. He was actually working on my spine because I had mechanical issues. Turned out that I had fallen as a child. I don't remember the fall, but it really tilted my pelvis, and my spine had to compensate basically to overcompensate to keep me upright all those years, including 2 pregnancies. And so it calcified so much that now it was pressing onto my nerves along the spine, and it was dysregulating all of my body functions. But on top of that, there was all the energetic baggage that I was carrying from my childhood trauma, having grown up in a family with domestic abuse, having followed the path that was not mine professionally. The degree that I got was actually selected for me and enforced by my family. And so I had the diploma, but I did not have a profession because I was not going to work as an engineer. It was so misaligned with who I am from nature. And so all those things, and also going through poverty in post-Soviet Armenia, like literally surviving without gas and water and heat, and like you just name it.
Yeah.
So all of that accumulation on top of just actually having the mechanical issues had created that. And so he fixed my spine, but he also cleansed me energetically, which I did not understand that at the time. He was really healing not only me, but everything that I inherited from my lineage that was unresolved at the energetic level. He's an incredible Reiki master. I found out all of this years later, but I just thought he was just doing some spinal adjustments and manual therapy. But there was much more that was going into it.
I have a quick
That was the
question.
encounter that changed it.
So you refer to him as your twin soul. There's a lot of people that have lots of definitions of what my twin flame or my twin flame is, twin soul, like all of these things. For you, you refer to him as what, your twin soul or your twin flame?
Twin flame as a mirror soul because he's my mirror and I am his.
Okay. And so tell us just a little bit more about what that twin flame means to you. There's so many definitions of it out there. So I want to get clear on what it means for you.
There are a lot of definitions, and I've been honestly studying this for a number of years. The moment the realization came, which was also a total chance, I think it's the soul recognition that you cannot really mistaken for anything else. Your soul knows that I know this person, and the magnetism is so strong. There's this constant pull as well as push. The pull is there because it's one energetic body. This is how I see twin flames, right? It's one soul in two physical bodies. So it's there's constant magnetic pull towards union. But because of the trauma and all the fragmentation that old souls like us carry, the unresolved trauma, the push is just as strong as the pull. And that's what creates this push and pull, like runner and chaser dynamics, which I've been on that cycle for a number of years. And ultimately, that's what it is. It's really catalyzing your evolution and every so often just giving that a new fuel for you to unfold into the next phase of your unraveling. And it is extremely painful in a lot of cases because that really brings out all the gunk, all the baggage that is not only yours, but from lineage, from the collective. There are a lot of collective programming that people like us deal with in our own healing. All of that comes up. And so it's a very cyclical relationship. The first time that he disappeared, I had no idea who he was, but I just knew I would never be the same. And there was 4 years of silence until he reappeared again, which is when I needed to go. I got stuck again now at this different level. It was more financially because money was not coming at all, no matter what I applied for, with all the qualifications, with the doctorate and everything. I was just completely stuck. That was the second time when he showed up and did what he needed to do to catalyze me into the next level because now I needed to heal the poverty programming, the everything else that was blocking the money flow. And then he disappeared again a few months later, right? And I went on that journey by myself. But there's constant presence, energetic presence of that person in your life. At least that's my expression. And that's what he shares. It's the energy field is shared. And so we feel each other. There are moments in my life when I go like, oh, and I feel something like there's pain and heaviness in my heart, but there's nothing going on in my life. And then weeks later, I realize and I find out, if we're in communication, that he was going through something really challenging, right? So the energetic field is shared and we feel each other. He might call me and say, "What's going on? Why did you even do this?" So he picks up things that I do, and he might just call and give me like counsel on that. There are also things that we found out many times, like we live parallel lives in the sense that the even minutia things. I remember this one time. I called him, he called me, and I was driving to pick up a FedEx delivery that did not get dropped off because of the signature, although it was piece of clothing, they should not have required signature. But basically, I was driving to whatever their location was to pick up my item. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I just picked up my item from a FedEx location because I had the similar scenario this morning. They delivered it, they did not leave it. So it was hours of difference, but the exact same. It's a daily life things. Even those are parallel. And it's just really fascinating. One of those days we were on the camera, and it doesn't happen very often because, again, as pleasant as magnetic as it is, it's also very painful because you see all your darkness in the mirror all of a sudden. It just brings the energetic residue that you haven't resolved yet. And I just saw his background, which is the place that he lives. We have the same colors of the interior, we have the same countertops. So the choices that we made buying a place, even visually, they're exactly the same. And so that's what the mirror soul or a twin soul or a twin flame, however you want to call it, I think is about. And the reason for me it's a flame because the flame is constantly burning in me. And I realized that the first time he disappeared, I thought I was just going to burn down completely and disappear. It was that the power of the flame was so strong. I thought, like, literally, it's just going to burn me down. And so the flame is there. It's at a very different level now because I've healed so much, I've resolved so much. I'm the sovereign whole self, the way I experience myself. And that's why I can now carry out these big projects into the world because I speak my truth. I feel empowered. I stand for my truth. I bring all my talents and gifts opened up I didn't know I had. And similar for him and my understanding, twin flames can only unite if it's part of the soul contract, number one. And second is when each one becomes whole. So you're not uniting as two parts, two halves of a whole, but each one is so whole and sovereign that there is no codependency. There is none of those dysfunctional patterns in any relationship, that you can honor each other in the fullness. And then the joint mission is catalyzed. It's called the third energy that
Yeah.
is born as a result of the union, and the joint mission is catalyzed if that's part of the soul's journey.
Okay, so for what I'm understanding is that there's certain people or a person in your that comes into your life that basically shows you all the stuff that you don't want to look at, and it's your choice whether to look at it or not, and actually learn to accept and bring those aspects of yourself back into your own wholeness. And eventually you be by these encounters you hopefully become more and more whole, and in that you may or may not ever be with romantically be with your twin flame, but it will probably never be like beautiful and healthy until you both have reached a certain level of fullness where you're not constantly triggering each other. Is that accurate?
That is accurate, yes. And I want to also say it really depends on the willingness of
Yeah,
each counterpart
true.
to do the work.
Yeah.
I find that I'm constantly seeking answers. Like I've probably tried every modality on the planet for healing because the moment I get stuck, I know that I need to do something. And it's more of a intuitively guided at this point. I've learned to curate my own curriculum, as I call it. And I might do a regression, I might do something else to really unpack whatever that next block is and just kind of move on. And every time I do that, things really move forward in a positive sense exponentially. Not every person does that. I intentionally seek, and I find that not every person does that. And for now, what I pick up from the collective, and I don't want to sound any stereotypical, but the masculine is more, there's stronger structure in it, and they may or may not necessarily look for those solutions voluntarily. And I think for the feminine it's the same, but I find that in a collective it's more present with the masculine, although things are shifting now. I see more and more men really stepping up and doing deep work. If we're just kind of thinking, talking about ratio, it's always been there, but just kind
Yeah.
of, and I think it goes in phases because as a spiritual counterpart as a spiritual twin, I think the feminine always goes first, and the masculine, which is the kind of the material twin, he follows. And so I think that's what is happening. And oftentimes it feels like the gap is so much bigger the more work that I do, but then it balances itself out. So ultimately, it comes down to the free will and the choices of each individual that makes on that path, regardless of what their twin flame kind of a predestined path is.
Yeah. And so one of the things that I think, because I understand and I've understand this concept of the twin flame, and whether it's not necessarily my exact belief, but what I do know is that we as humans tend to attract our parents essentially in relationship and in bosses and in friends. It's like this model of what we first grow up in, very much like you're trying to switch the dynamic of the child's parental, the child educator
Mhm.
role. And so I know that I dated my mother many times and they had similar qualities, triggered me in similar ways, and over time, through that, because I chose, much like you, to be like, oh, I'm triggered. There's something going on with me. Let me look at that. Let me see how I can heal it and resolve it and move forward. But there's this point where I think in all of this, we can do it through these outside people, through our twin flames, through these relationships, through our bosses. We can learn. But you had the opportunity after healing to actually take a stand with what I think is usually the source of all of the stuff. So, through that healing, with an encounter with your twin flame, you healed enough that you were able to take a stand. So tell me about that.
The moment I felt like I've become the wolf was the moment when I stood up to my mother. And it was years into healing after that encounter. And it was related to my relationship that when she found out that I was dating a man who had a different skin color, she basically put an ultimatum that it's either the family or him. And it wasn't about him or anything else. It was
Yeah.
about when I was already in my late 40s for her to just honor my choices. And that was the first time I have mustered enough courage, I felt like, that I could just speak up because I was silent most of my life. And I was really trying to prove my worth through all these external accomplishments. And I've accomplished a lot. But that was the moment I realized that pretty much she dominated most of my life. And it was her choices that I've lived, including the husband that I divorced from, which she approved and basically helped me cultivate that relationship, which I was initially opposed to. So, whether it was the career, the personal relationship, she had such a major influence in basically making me choose what she wanted versus what was truly mine. And I had no voice because I grew up people pleasing, because when you grow up in such a dysfunctional dynamics of domestic abuse, as a child you quickly learn that you are the mediator between your parents, and you absorb all that emotional energy, and you learn that love needs to be earned. So I became that perfect girl, and basically meeting the external demands and putting myself last at some point. For somebody like me who is very strong intuitively, has always been, I had to suppress that voice over and over just to survive, because we're wired for survival. As Dr. Gabor Mate says, attachment versus authenticity. It was so important for me to stay attached because my survival depended on them, particularly on my mother, and particularly after the divorce. I was young when my parents divorced. And so I really became her little mini me, and basically doing everything that I was expected to do just to survive. And so for me, that step was so important. That was the moment I felt the power. That was the moment of the reclamation of this is who I am. And I have this is my birthright to make my own authentic choices, regardless of people approve or disapprove, no matter how close or far they are, no matter how much I love them. It is my birthright to live my authentic choices.
And the beautiful thing about that is my story is similar. There's a couple of points. So, one, the beautiful thing is that through your healing, you had reclaimed enough of yourself that at a deep subconscious level, you finally felt capable enough of taking care of yourself. So, it's like, if I lose this person who was the key to my survival when I was little, then I will still be okay. So, in that, I can use my voice. I can reclaim my voice. I can reclaim the aspect or the part of me that makes choices and stands in what's true and right for me. The other piece that I want to bring up that I think is really important, because your childhood was pretty tumultuous, my childhood was very tumultuous. But you don't have to have a crazy, tumultuous childhood to have this dynamic of where you are terrified to go against what your parent wanted. Oftentimes, the hardest people is like the most loving parent, but maybe they're just constantly worried about you. And in that, you grow up feeling like your wants have to fit inside their want. And obviously, if you grow up feeling unsafe, your wants have to fit inside their wants. And so it's like I've used this before. It's this Russian doll metaphor. Like, here's society's wants that'll, like, here's the outside Russian doll, and then the next one is your friends, and then the next one is your family, and then the next one is your initial caregivers, mom and dad usually, and then inside is yours. So if you have this big want, by the time you go through all those filters, all you're left is this little peanut size thing of what you want. And you end up feeling like you never got what you want. But it's because generationally it's been passed down that we needed the tribe to survive, that we could not survive on our own. We have much different levels of safety. It's totally possible to survive on your own now in a way that it never has been. It's not really possible, I think, to thrive on your own, but you can survive on your own. And so, even if you didn't have a big tumultuous childhood, this is still very strong for a lot of people. And I want the people who are feeling that to not be like, I didn't have all this crazy big trauma that happened. And why do I feel like that? What is wrong with me? It's still hardwired through your DNA. And it doesn't mean you have to have big, crazy things. Sometimes, if your things are big and crazy, maybe it's a little harder to break it. But I just want to take that moment to point that out. And so, when you stood up to your mom and you said, no, this is who I'm going to date, this is what's true and right for me, I'm going to guess there was a ripple effect in your life of things that happened as a result of that. Can you?
Yes, definitely. There was a rupture with her. We stopped talking for a period of time, and that was her choice. And it did create a ripple effect. It really created that sense of empowerment. And I kind of started showing up in other places with the same sense of inner truth and empowerment. So I started taking actions in a professional sense that I was scared or hesitant to take, right? Because my voice would not come out authentically. And even the podcast, Janae, you're doing incredible things on this platform, and I have a podcast that I finally started earlier this year, but I was sitting with that idea for years. But because my voice would not come out with the strength and the power and authenticity, I could not really do the things that I wanted to do professionally. I wanted to create a community. So it was affecting every area of my life. So when that basically the block cleared, and there was this immense release of energy, it trickled into every area of my life. And it transformed me in more ways that I can describe. And then when we finally repaired that fracture with my mother, she was a different person in terms of she was treating me, right? There was more respect, there
Yeah.
was more listening, that was more honoring my choices and my truth, but I really needed to hold my ground for a period of time. And even now, sometimes it comes up in very small things, but I really needed to almost train her, right? Because those are her typical patterns, and there's no judgment. I know exactly where all those things are coming from. She raised us by herself, so it was all about protection and overpowering, just making the safest choices for us. And that's why whatever stereotypically is not safe, she would not accept. And so that's what where it was coming from. It was coming from very fear-based and very powerful love. And so the relationship has changed. The way she started treating me, it was a lot of listening, lots of asking questions, a lot of working with my schedule, a lot of not calling, every hour. And so it created this healthy distance where we can now build this harmonious relationship as equals, as two adults who care for each other deeply and honor each other's choices and are there with the deepest love we can share for each other, despite the fact whether we approve or disapprove each other's choices.
And one of the things that's very beautiful about this, a lot of times when we're making a choice, like right as a little kid, you didn't want to stand up to your mother because there was the fear of losing your mother. Because if you lost your mother, that would have been very dangerous. Obviously, you're like 5 years old, 6 years old, however old you were. And so it's a survival instinct and a fear of loss. And then you feel capable enough that you can risk losing your mother. And you did for a little while. And I think this is the thing as we get older, we don't want to change these patterns subconsciously that have kept us safe and kept the things that we perceive that we need with us because we're afraid of what we'll lose, but we can't judge what we'll gain. And yes, sometimes you're going to lose your mother as you did for a period of time. And sometimes they come back. And when that comes back, it will always come back in a different form. Sometimes it might not come back. So it's a thing, but there is this tipping point. If you're ready to let it go, that's when you can really step into the truth of who you are. And what ends up coming down the line, even though there's often this transition period where it's a little messy and a little painful, the line is typically more in alignment with what's right for you and feels
Absolutely.
bigger and more beautiful.
Absolutely. I also want to mention with the work that I've done after that, I really come to realize that our parents, and particularly the mother, is your most important karmic partner
Yeah.
because we're really here to learn lessons, life lessons, like major life lessons, and for the evolution of the soul. And so these people really took the responsibility to helping you learn those lessons by they don't remember that consciously, but whatever in whichever way the path will unfold, it will actually bring you to the evolution that your soul planned for this incarnation, and they will help you basically on that path. So when I came to that realization, that's when things fully transformed. Now, my mother doesn't believe any of this, and it's not important. That's not the point. But when I've come to that realization, there was this total and utter forgiveness of
Mm.
everything that I've ever experienced with her. And there was a lot of pain and suffering in the dynamics. And again, it was all coming from love. There was never intentional of any of this, right? She was doing the best she knew to do because of her own patterns, her own upbringing, and everything else that she went through. But when I reached that realization as a result of the work that I've been continuously doing, and I have to say this has been the most difficult thing with all the degrees, all too difficult childbirths. Like I've gone through a lot of challenges, but the healing work is by far probably is because it's really at the core level, at the soul level, but it's also the most beautiful, the most profound, the most gratifying thing that really leads you to this sense of I'm not even going to say wholeness because that's what ultimately it's all about. You integrate all your fragmented parts, and not only from this lifetime, but the felt sense of life, of experience that you gain as a result of it, it doesn't compare to anything. So, no matter what I went through in this excavation of 8 years, it was absolutely worth it. And it transformed me, created a ripple effect in both directions through my lineage. And I can see that in my relationship with my sons, in my relationship with everybody else. And so the ripple effect is unbelievable. And my mother, having never done any healing work, she's a different person. And
Yeah.
her experience of life has changed towards being way more positive than it was before.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing as you heal, the people around you heal. And so sometimes parents will come to me and they'll be like, I already screwed my kids up. They're past a certain age. I'm like, the thing is, when you heal, you light the path for them to heal whatever got not messed up, but whatever challenges they had. So it ripples into your family, it ripples into your friends, it ripples into your community. You being the example of healing. Before I ask you the final question, how can people get involved with wholeness education and how can they reach you?
Thank you for that question, Janaea. Now, wholeness education is primarily designed for school districts, but I do also offer personal coaching for teenagers and their parents. I oftentimes work with the young person, teenager, young adult, and they coach, and I coach the parents alongside just so we heal the relational dynamics. Because when that happens, there's a lot of things that we don't even need to do for the young person, right? The relationship itself addresses a lot of the challenges oftentimes that they experience. So they can find me on my website, which is alinavehuni.com. And from there, they can reach me for any questions. But the wholeness education is primarily for school districts, it's courses for educators, and we serve parents to that, as well as youth courses. And it's all about giving this awareness and the tools and the practices early on. So the parent never has to feel I already messed up my child, or
Right.
the child never has to feel that they need to leave their parent, because we spoke about you're not afraid of losing your parent. And that's when you stand up and you live your truth. That should not really be in conflict. Right. As a young person, I should be able to live my truth and be surrounded by loving and caring parents and caregivers. So wholeness education, it's about wholeness of an individual, wholeness of a family, wholeness of a community. And we are envisioning global wholeness if we do this work intentionally, long enough, and successfully.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so my final question is what does be the wolf mean to you?
That's such a beautiful question. I think any one of us who have done deep healing work understand the significance of a wolf, right, as an archetype. And for me, it's really about living your highest timeline in your authenticity and making your truest, biggest contribution to the world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing your story and letting us go on this journey with you and for the work that you're doing in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janaea. Thank you for having me. It was a true pleasure.
Beautiful. And remember, everybody, when you be the wolf, humanity evolves. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.